Hello and good day to all of you. We are meeting again from another important topic under the lecture series of HCI. Today, our main emphasis is going to be towards the topic of basics of design evaluation. If you recall, in the completed two lecture sessions, we have discussed about certain basics associated with HCIs and the concerns, implications associated with bad HCI designs and the possible advantages people can experience in relation to good HCI designs. How can we differentiate between good designs and bad designs? So that is the place where evaluation is going to be a vital aspect. So in today's topic, we are going to discuss about multiple evaluation strategies and what are their positive sides, what are their negative sides. Stay tuned and listen carefully to my discussion and feel free to pause or rewind back and extract the important aspects and make your own notes from this discussion. Okay, so let's move for the first slide, which is about how we can evaluate a design. Now, as we have already aware, there are multiple ways that we can initiate the evaluation. One of the main and one of the very famous mechanism is the Likert scale approach, where you will be providing a particular scenario in relation to the HCI domain. We can provide certain screenshots or mock-ups of the interfaces that you have designed. Then from the stakeholders, you are requesting them to rate this from 1 to 5. The other option is open-ended reflection. That means you are asking open-ended question. Open-ended question in the sense it is not a yes no type answer which is expected or true false type of an answer is expected. You are answering a question and stakeholder can provide a very descriptive elaboration. In simple terms, it's like an essay question. It's like you are answering to an essay question. So in the interview session, you can throw these open-ended questions to the targeted interviewers and they can provide their reflection on the questions that you have been asked. One of the critical concern associated with the evaluation aspects are evaluations are subjective. What do you mean by that? That means the same design, maybe I like it, but maybe you don't like it because our perceptions are different. That is the normal human nature. So therefore we have to have a proper strategy to overcome this subjectivity as much as possible when reaching to a proper organized and synchronized decision ultimately. Some of the biggest problems which people are experiencing when evaluating the designs, as listed in the slide, the designers are blind about the stakeholders' requirements and vice versa. Users are blind about the designers' insights, right? So designers may commence their designing processes without having face-to-face discussions, proper brainstorming with the required stakeholders. So they might personally interpret this is what they want, but actually that personal interpretation which is made by the designers might be completely wrong, might be opposite to what the real world stakeholders are looking into. At the same time, from the users aspect as well, users are also not properly synchronizing with the designer. So users have no clue what designers are going to do and whether the designers are going to address the specified requirements, because as users you might not have given any specific requirements to them. So unless this synchronization problem in between these two parties are not resolved, it is going to be a problematic aspect associated with the design, as well as it will be a big concern when it comes to the evaluation phases as well. Now, when you are going to evaluate a specific design during its prototype stages, it is ideal and recommended to select the best possible audience for the evaluation purposes to get their feedback. Now, good example is pointed here. If you have developed a Braille software, you need to expose it to a blind person, a person who is visually challenged, to get their feedback, because the world and the interaction experiences associated with a visually challenged person could be different against a person whom is not visually challenged. So requesting a person who is having proper vision to evaluate the system might not be an ideal way, because it's not going to assist in getting the hidden insights through the form of feedbacks. So in books associated to HCI, there are multiple evaluation strategies have been introduced, which have various pros and cons. So among these strategies, initially we are going to look at one prominent category called usability studies. So the basis of usability studies is we are inviting the potential users or the stakeholders, or in other words the end users, and we provide them the initial versions of the prototype that has been developed according to the understanding of the designers. We request them to exercise or experience via interacting with the prototype and give their feedback. This has been identified as very effective mechanism because this leads to the direct interaction between the relevant end users. So what are the positive concerns? It will prevent false assumptions at the very early stage. So if the designers are going at a wrong track, they are advised, they are being enlightened on that well in advance. And we have already discussed the HCI design mechanisms are usually iterative and incremental. So usability studies mechanism also needs to be executed iteratively with certain increments added to the prototypes. Through the usability studies, designers and the relevant stakeholders or the end users interact face to face on top of the platform created by the prototype increment, which is being introduced or which is being used to initiate the discussion. Therefore, designers can get a very good idea about the interaction requirements, the expectation and mental picture what the end users are expecting according to the business context they are functioning at. Even though there are some negative aspects associated with evaluation studies as well, which is being denoted with a minus sign, you can see in the slide. This is associated with the individual psychologies of the people. Now, this is a face-to-face discussion with the designer and the end user. Maybe as an end user, depending on your experience, you might have certain bad or critical comments to make. But assuming designer might feel uncomfortable, you prevent exposing those negative feedback to the designers, where you conceal some of your genuine intentions, some of your genuine thoughts to the designer, which is a negative point. And the other problem is the physical meeting to conduct face-to-face discussions would be practically challenging, because you have to invite the users from your customers organization to visit to your place and experience the system via providing required feedbacks. There could be multiple constraints like time, schedule and cost associated constraints in resolving those problems. Moving forward to the second strategy, the online surveys. Online surveys are very cost effective and you can reach a large respondent base, which is very good. So when you are creating the online questionnaire, you are free to share the screenshots or the mock-ups of the initial versions of your HCI design or the prototypes design. Then you are distributing that to the considered audience. So that is a very effective way, even though we have certain bottlenecks or negative points associated with this mechanism as well, such as there is a tendency when a questionnaire is provided, online questionnaire is provided, hence it is unmonitored, the respondent might quickly respond to the questions without digging in deep and without considering the scenarios or screenshots provided and cognitively analyzing those with proper reasoning. For the sake of escaping from this questionnaire, they might provide some answers quickly. So we cannot always expect through online surveys we are getting a proper reflection. Now there are very good examples in real world use cases as well, where Walmart has provided a questionnaire to its customers and they have requested certain modifications, and Walmart has invested or utilized millions of dollars in embedding the suggestions provided by the customers, but that has made no revenue enhancement for the company. So that is why we should not be totally relying on the online survey related feedback, because it's unmonitored and there is a tendency the end user could provide anything for the sake of escaping from the questionnaire. Hence, this is not live, not monitored. The interaction experiences are not properly shared. We cannot initiate a discussion with the end user. Therefore, again, we have a restriction in extracting the ideal opinions, suggestions, which are having in end user's mind as well. So likewise, we have certain bottlenecks or deficiency associated with the online surveys approach. Next, we are going to consider about the focus groups. Now, usually in focus groups, several related people for the design concern will get together and they collectively discuss and brainstorm about what is to be included and what is not to be included. So which can be identified as a very good attribute, because the collective consensus or the synchronization of ideas is a very good aspect in reaching towards a finalized, more stable solution before commencing the designing in an HCI perspectives. But some of the potential issues associated with focus groups are one of the main concern is, as you can see, I have denoted with minus symbols in the slide, the cultural barriers. Now, various cultures have various value systems. So people belonging to those cultures also represent those value systems. It could be based on the ethnicity, it could be based on the religion, it could be based on the social economical status. Likewise, there could be multivaried attributes associated with the cultural aspects. Let's try to understand this with a simple example. Now, say for an example, for the recycle bin, as you can see in the slide, we denote a symbol. This is very prominent in the Windows operating systems, where the unwanted things has to be put to the recycle bin. But there could be cultures where they don't use dustbins or recycle bins, where they might directly burn the unwanted things. So for that sort of a culture, representing this sort of a symbol might be a bit controversial, because they might not have any clue. In the same way, depiction of certain symbols in the screen. In certain societies, that's fine, but the same symbol might be considered as a insult or a defamation associated with various cultures, diverse cultures. And the usage of colors is also a good example. Certain cultures consider white is very good, auspicious, but in contrast, black is very dull or inauspicious. So as a HCI designer, these value aspects also has to be considered, going beyond the basic business or use case related aspects. Then I spoke about the psychological aspects already, right? The psychological barriers, in the sense, as the stakeholders or end users, you might have certain criticism, but assuming the relevant parties will get upset, will they be heartbroken, you have a second thought whether to share it in the same way or not to share it, or vice versa. Maybe you are angry with them, so you can, though the system is good or though the design is good, you can keep on criticizing. Those are some possible psychological barriers which I have already discussed with. The other prominent concern is this tragedy of commons. Now, this is a very important concept which especially operates in group environments. If there are multiple people trying to reach to a common consolidated decision, they might have different opinions based on their experiences. So each of them will raise their opinions, where ultimately there might not be any concise or synchronized decision. Meeting time has been passed, but at the end of the meeting, no final decision is reached. This is known as tragedy of commons in a group setting. So this is also a possible weakness which could be visible in a focus group environment. Moving forward, the next aspect is the expert opinion. This is somewhat same as the focus group discussion, right? So other than the relevant stakeholders, you can invite some of the experts who have designed similar type of HCIs for the business use case under consideration. So sharing of expertise, face-to-face experiences associated with relevant use cases is really good, which are positive factors associated with this mechanism. But as deficiencies, inviting and involvement of the experts might be very costly, and sometimes experts might be dominating their ideas, where though there is a relevancy on certain points, those aspects would be diluted because everybody might listen to the expert's opinion, disregarding the other's opinion. Then, as I mentioned, in a group setting environment, again the problem of tragedy of commons might arise, where ultimately by the end of the meeting no final decision has been reached. Different people have different set of opinions. Next approach is the comparative assessment mode. So where before commencing the designing of interface for the use case and the investigation, it is possible to do a comparative analysis about similar HCIs developed on similar business contexts, business scenarios, which is a good point, and also that will help to do certain amount of self brainstorming with the association of literature analysis. And very important in extracting the active ingredients, there might be various research papers published on various designs and the best practices associated with the designs or important ingredients that has to be considered. For an example, the e-personas project. The intention of the project is to introduce computational interfaces to facilitate most of the public interactions country's population is initiating with the government, like paying of water bills, paying of light bills, other public inquiries, etc. But due to the complexity of the interfaces which has been introduced in the e-personas project, it has become a failure. So there are research papers associated with those concerns, where you can simply Google and find on those aspects. Identification of the active ingredients associated with the business context is also extremely vital. Under the comparative assessment mechanism, there could be certain deficiencies as well. Likewise, the business operation might be the same, but the business context might be different. You might be looking at a particular HCI design presented on the same business for a Western country, but for the same business which is operated in an Eastern country or Asian country, the context might be different, though the operations are same. So those aspects has to be considered because it's really vital. Then the discussions could be complex because when you are analyzing similar alternatives, there are a lot of options to choose in between, where the decision making will become even more complex. Moving forward for the next section on participation observation, where in this approach it's like a pilot run. So you can deploy a particular version of your prototype in the relevant or in the actual implementation space. So actual real world end users will attempt on it in the real world business operational environment. So as a designer, you also can participate as an observer for this experiment, and you can see the experiences they are extracting and the difficulties they are facing, or the negative interaction experiences. Likewise, everything can be captured, and in the next iteration of the prototype, those deficiencies could have been addressed. So that is the meaning which is been depicted in the second point as well. Observe the work behaviors of the staff with the new UIs, because the version of the prototype is being exposed to the real business environment as a pilot run, and you can judge all the difficulties which they are facing, and that can be introduced in the next iteration of the prototype. So the problem of this could be it is very costly sometimes, where the organization might have certain privacy constraints where they don't want external people to join into their operational environment. Likewise, those are some of the constraints associated with the participation observation approach. Finally, we are looking at the simulation approach. Here, this is a sort of an artificial mechanism where we are anticipating possible user behaviors using artificial simulation mechanisms like Monte Carlo simulation and etc. The advantages are it's very fast, and you don't have to involve a lot of people, and when we are creating the simulation model, we anticipate what is relevant and what is irrelevant. But it has a lot of deficiencies as well. One is the complexity, and the results which are yielded from this approach might not be completely accurate, because it's a hypothetical interaction model which is being used for the elicitation of the insights. Abstract considerations in HCI designing. What are the high level aspects that you should think twice when you are designing an HCI for a particular business context? You might be proposing the HCI for a specific niche area of the business, but that might not be adequate. You need to get the complete picture. The whole picture might be important for you to design flawless and effective HCI interfaces. So only considering about the niche area is inadequate. You need to have a generalistic opinion about the complete picture. Then the understanding of the interactions types, stakeholders' knowledge, their education, understandability level, cognition capacities, all these things has to be considered, which we refer as the realism. As a designer, you have to realize on those aspects before you commence the design. Otherwise, it could be a waste of your time and effort and money. And finally, the reliability of the proposed HCI designs. It should be flawless, comfortable, convenient for the users to use. So while reaching to the step of commencing the HCI designing for a particular business concern, it is important to address these axioms as well. And it could be used as a validation criteria point to evaluate each of the prototype increment whether these aspects has been properly addressed. Okay, so thank you very much, and we'll meet in another important session.